6:30, call the meeting to order. Certify compliance with the open records law.
We are compliant.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Milliron.
Here.
Councilmember Gillis.
Here.
Councilmember Hartung.
Here.
Councilmember Hooker.
Here.
Councilmember Raisler.
Here.
Councilmember Schneider.
Here.
Councilmember Schofield.
Here.
We have quorum.
Next we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It is adopted. Next we move on to public comments. I don't see we have anybody in the audience. Did anybody contact us concerning any public comments?
They did not.
Okay. And we have no scheduled appearances, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following matters may be acted upon by the City Council utilizing a single vote. Individual items which any member wishes to address in greater detail or as a separate item on the regular agenda may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any council member. We have the minutes from the regular City Council meeting from April 28, 2021. Bartender's license for Tyler Kilbotton, Bradley A. Kilbotton, and Timber L. Kohler for the Rooster Tail Bar and Grill, and for Hunter Simonson at the Cobblestone Inn and Suites. It's hardly known.
Yeah, Chief Ridgway approved all of them.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's approved. Next we move on to the business agenda, mayor's report. Just a couple of things to talk about. Spring cleanup has come to an end. I'm sure Superintendent Gillis will have a report for us, but I think the city did a pretty good job. Cleaned up a lot of stuff. And it's always, I think it's an important public service that we do for the community to do that. And again, another successful spring cleanup this year. And also just going to say that there will be Memorial Day services again this year. We have been contacted by the American Legion. They're going to do, there's a cemetery and then they always end up with the final one at Memorial Park. But they are putting together a program for Memorial Day services. I'm assuming they'll also have the thing prior down here, the Veterans Memorial along the river, and then the event in the park late morning on Memorial Day. So it's great to see the American Legion is again putting together Memorial Day services, and I'm sure they'll be obviously be promoted and out, and so if anybody can attend, that would be great. But it's good to hear that after the year off, that they'll be coming back with those services. That's all I've got. Any questions? Hearing none, we have nothing come off the consent agenda. Administrator's report. Administrator Rasmussen.
Just one quick item actually that we talked a little bit about at the finance meeting earlier this evening. I put it all in front of you. We did get a fact sheet from the Treasury Department outlining basically our ARPA funding. Just a little more details that kind of we've all been waiting on, and I think there's still some gray areas here, but basically, the main things that we thought were going to be eligible that really hit is the city side of things, and two items in particular that we spent some time talking about. If you get to page 5 of the document under item 4, replacing lost public sector revenue.
Is there a chance I could get a copy?
I'm sorry, maybe I did not pass it to everyone.
Yeah, I think it's just the committee members must have got them.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I'm very sorry.
Matt, I'm gonna look at you like.
It's on a need-to-know basis. You don't need
I printed plenty, I just didn't have them all. There we go. All right.
Sometimes I
If anyone else needs one, I have some here. Okay, I'm sorry. Now that everyone has them in front of them, so if you turn to page 5, we're talking about replacing lost public sector revenue. Again, we've talked about that from the delinquent water sewer utility things that were suspended by the PSC, and then we also did the same for sewer. We had some ambulance billings that we couldn't do due to COVID that would certainly be eligible under that, and some of our bartender licenses and some of those fees that basically were reduced as well. And the other item, again, we thought this was pretty clear, investing in under number 6 on page 7, investing in water and sewer infrastructure. And just wanted to make note that also does include stormwater as well. I think for most cities, I think that's going to be, probably the biggest item that this money gets used for. I did get a chance to talk to Chief Ridgway, who, as you all know, wears a township hat as well, and shared this with him, and they're still undecided what they're going to be doing some of their money on, and some of the other entities as well. From a go-forward standpoint, again, we've got until 2024 to spend this money. Clearly that the Finance Committee will be talking more about any provision that's in this, and I know one member has brought up another one under item 2, I believe it is in this, or
5.
I'm sorry, 5, thank you, Mayor. So again, keep thinking about it. If there's projects out there that, we're in no hurry to spend this money, if there's items out there that, maybe, boy, this has been talked about for several years, and frankly, we just hadn't had the money to do it, I would encourage you to read through this and see if it might apply. That we'll have probably started at a future finance meeting to talk a little bit more about the actually what the city might be able to use these funds for, so.
Wasn't there a notice today that Wisconsin now is getting less than they actually thought? Is that for this money, or is that something completely
Man, I'm not sure, I didn't see that whole thing, but,
Yeah, about of the,
700 million
less than
what
the
they-
300 some
Yeah.
billion or
Yeah.
whatever that we were, yeah.
I just
So-
didn't know, is that this money, or is that something different?
I don't know, I heard,
Yeah.
I heard a news report on it, but I didn't see if that affected this number that we were going through.
this was on the league site yesterday, and the league sent an update today to it. I didn't see anything like that in there, but that's not to say that it isn't.
I thought that was directed to money the state was gonna get, not down to
Not to municipalities,
I didn't-
that could be, yeah. Yeah, because again, this is federal money coming directly to us
Gotcha.
versus, the last one was coming through the states, and again, we had to apply for it, and the state gave us back. So I'm optimistic that it isn't that, but I don't know that for a fact.
So we don't know how much we're getting exactly.
Well, again, what we were told we were getting was just under 108, like 178,500, something like that.
It's still that number.
That's, to my knowledge, that's still what's out there. And, and the first part of that payment, the first half of that payment was supposedly gonna be here sometime in June. Again, doesn't mean that we have to know what we're gonna spend it on by then, it just needs to be segregated on the books differently, and at some point, someone's gonna ask what we spent the money on.
Is NTEC entitled to any of this, like separately outside of?
Either they talk about the infrastructure and not that I'm aware of. Now, again, that's not to say that,
Because that's what I'm wondering if some of the townships that don't.
exactly. I mean, that is the gray area of this, when we have entities that we're not quite sure of what, I mean, again, speaking very frankly here, I don't know, the number, the items in here, the townships, for example, really work very well for, they don't have water sewer. They don't have, I mean, even some of these employee bonus pieces, they don't have employees. And clearly you can't spend it on roads, so that's out as well. But, this discussion when talking about transferring to other entities and other nonprofit entities, that's the gray area of, well, gee, maybe some of those monies could get turned over for others.
So they're sending us the first half of the money, we get to hold on to it, tell them how we spend it, and what we don't spend, we gotta give it back.
Oh, I don't know if there's any provision of giving some, I mean, you got till 2024. I think it's fair to say everyone's either gonna spend it or allocate it elsewhere would be my guess. But yeah, on the rare occasion that it doesn't get spent, I would guess the municipality would probably have to send it back. But again, we have until 2024 to figure that out, and anyone who frankly didn't spend it is probably a little foolish. I mean, clearly we have needs, and we'll talk about those more in the future. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Any questions for the city administrator? Hearing none, we'll have discussion possible action regarding a donation to the Pepin County K-9 unit. This just went before the Finance Committee before this. Chairman Schofield, would you like to speak about on it?
Yep, Finance Committee met prior to this meeting, and the recommendation was to allocate $500 per year for the service of the K-9 for that unit. Meaning the dog that they get now, generally they're good for 5 to 6 years. So we would donate $500 per year for the service life of that dog. Now, if something happens that officer leaves in 3 years, the dog's gonna go with it. so then we would be done with that, and then we would.
We'll just look at it at the
reassess
time,
it.
again, what we would do at the next one.
Yeah, we would just reassess for the next dog.
If I could add, just part of the rationale, I talked to Sheriff Weiner this afternoon, earlier today, and Matt, chiming too as well. It sounds like they're pretty close to their goal, very close to their goal. So then, when I talked with Chief Ridgway about this before he left yesterday, maybe it would be more, because again, we thought we had some potentiality of interest in donating to this program, but where would our money be best served? And maybe it would be best served on an ongoing basis, because clearly as Sheriff Weiner identified, the costs just don't go away after the first year. So if they were at their goal, then maybe this is a better way to go, and he was amenable to that in talking to him today. So I shared that with the committee, and that's what we came up with. Or, I'm sorry, that's what the committee came up with.
So if I follow this correctly, if the officer decides to leave, the 40-some thousand.
Actually, Matt, maybe you can answer, what happens in that particular?
So typically, the dogs obviously, so the dog and the trainer get trained together. It's a 5-week, very intensive thing. Typically, that dog kind of only reacts and responds to that trainer. So it's pretty rare that if somebody leaves, that their dog stays there and gets retrained. Mondovi is the exception to that. They did that, they retrained their dog. That's almost unheard of. We didn't put a provision in ours. Some do, as far as like if they take the dog with them and go work somewhere, they ultimately pay X amount back. We didn't feel we needed to do that, essentially. Just because it comes up in other communities that do that, as far as the authority to do that, if you will.
And just to clarify, what we were figuring is that, I believe what we were told, and then we also got the information that usually a dog stays in service about 6 years, maybe 5, maybe 7, depending
Yep, 5 to
depending on the
7
situation.
years.
So we were figuring that that's probably what it would be. This dog stays in service till they retire it. And at that point, if they do get another dog, we would, discuss it at that time. But again, on the committee, we discussed and just thought it was more important for the ongoing expenses would be the best way to have the city contribute.
Even after he said he doesn't want to go after public funds? In his speech?
Even after,
Sheriff Winter said they didn't want to have any public money in this.
well, that's what they had proposed. Again, we were thinking that instead of the public money that was going to the initial cost of doing it, so that this would be an ongoing program that we would be able to have access to the dog.
More like a maintenance.
Maintenance type stuff. Anyway, so if there's any other questions, again, the recommendation of the finance committee is what we're going to do. We can go ahead with that recommendation if somebody wanted to make a motion, and we could have Ed be in the debate about it if they wish.
I'll make a motion that we contribute $500 a year for the service life of that dog, and then reevaluate after that dog's left or retired.
Second. So it's on the floor for further discussion? Or questions, comments, concerns?
Apologies, Mayor, I don't know if this was made clear in finance, but my assumption is that this would begin in 2022 and then move forward.
Guess we didn't.
Yeah, we really didn't.
Yeah. So, we didn't clarify what year that it started.
Well, Matt, when do you expect the dog to be in service?
They're signed up for training in August. So dogs should be in service after the certification sometime in September.
We wanted to do 2022.
Again, I think it seemed pretty clear that the sheriff said that they've got enough money to get really the future, so I think this.
Okay.
That can go to general
So-
fund then?
Well, what the discussion that we had at Finance, Travis, was we don't want this to negatively impact any levy limitation piece. I mean, if we would have said we want to give a lump sum donation, my recommendation would have been that it comes out of fund balance. I think I'd make the same recommendation with the 500 moving forward. So it really doesn't negatively impact Chief Ridgway's budget or anyone else's. It's just coming out of fund balance and for the time frame. That would be my recommendation.
We would have the opportunity then at budget time to see exactly how we're gonna handle it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
So the other question though is, Councilman Schofield made the motion. Will you accept a friendly amendment to say that, or part of that motion to say that it begins budget year 2022?
Yep.
And who had the second?
Second.
Do you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, so friendly amendment to his own to say that we will add the, starting with budget year 2022. Any more comments, concerns? It's on the floor. If not, we're spending money. Roll call, please.
Member Schofield,
Yes.
Member Schneider,
Yes.
Member Raisler, you can abstain?
Yep.
Okay. Member Gillis,
Yes.
Member Hartung,
Yes.
Member Hooker,
Yes.
passes 5-0 with one abstention.
Okay, so motion's agreed to. Next, we have discussion regarding ordinance 535, authorizing all-terrain and utility task vehicles to use city streets within the city of Durand and regulating the operation of such vehicles. Administrator Rasmussen, you want to give a background for this discussion?
Notes here, okay. So this, I shared some of this with all of you a week or so ago, that, so we've had an issue with one individual in particular who lives on Prospect Avenue that wants to run an ATV, UTV, and basically as the ordinance was written, you're not allowed to go on the state highways. So they were struggling with trying and doing their best to get to side streets, but technically it wasn't legal, and had some discussions with Chief Ridgway on that. Basically what happened is as they did some more research on what the state did or did not allow, we discovered Chief Ridgway, and he had a discussion with Evan Mercer because it was just never brought up, and we passed this ordinance in 2019, that in 2017, the law was actually changed that allows local jurisdictions, cities, townships, to basically control ATV use on highways where the speed limit is 35 miles an hour or less. So, very clearly, we have the ability to control that. So in this particular situation of this individual or anyone else that's on a state highway, that we could amend our ordinance to allow, basically using ATVs, UTVs on the state highway as long as it's under 35 miles an hour. So basically, that's an option we have. The recommendation, I think, as we talked a little bit internally with Mayor Mailiron and Chair of Public Safety, is we'd like to kick this to Public Safety to talk about it a little bit more, rather than just saying, okay, let's just open up Prospect Avenue. Chief Ridgway has some concerns about especially the intersection of Highway 10, and so, frankly, do we open it up for everything, or do we just say, basically, you're allowed to be on the state highway until you get to a cross street and then get off? So that was basically what we'd like to talk about at a future, and even potentially before the next council meeting, because if we don't, this is could be a pretty simple change if again the committee recommends it and ultimately is approved at council.
Yeah. I believe that so basically there's three things for discussion that we could do. We could keep it as is.
Yep. Exactly.
Say no, but state highways are out. We could, as you said, turn around and just open it up, but obviously there's some safety concerns. And the third option would be that we would open it up enough so that anybody who lives on Prospect, similar to what we started to do with snowmobiles, at some point you can always get to a trail, and you can always so that we would at least give an opportunity to get to the side streets so you could utilize from your property. So again, those are probably the three options that are in front of us for discussion. But the idea was that we would bring it forward at have a public safety meeting and discuss those. And it is on the agenda here, so if anybody wants to have some input now or say what they feel like we should do, go ahead.
But I think when we come up with the ordinance originally, we had dealt with nav vehicles before. And at that time, there was no, the electric vehicles, there was no, they could not run on the state roads, correct?
Well, are you talking golf carts? Are you talking
No, the
ATVs?
all the electric vehicles back 5 years ago or whatever, when we had that.
Prior to 2017, nothing could run on a state highway.
Right.
Electric, NEV, utility vehicles,
Yeah.
golf carts, ATVs. So I think we were all of our information that we used to write that ordinance was pre-20, I think what is it, 17 or 18 when that got changed.
And we kind of had to argue a little to get a blessing to get the crossings that we did get for that. So, I mean, that's why the ordinance got written the way it is.
One of the pieces that Chief Ridgway wanted to check on too is just talk to some of our neighboring communities about how they handle it. And if they're aware of it as well and how they're handling it, so.
I'd be totally in favor of allowing them to get from their property to the nearest cross street. But obviously, we don't want anybody bombing the whole way.
Right.
And then I don't know if you have to put in some provision for people that are visiting, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be open for,
Could it be a permitted thing where you just permit only the people, for a free permit, obviously, but if I own a house on Prospect, I come down and say, all right, Scott, I live at this address, can I get some kind of a permit?
well, don't we open it up that if you have if somebody comes into town on a snowmobile, and you want to go visit somebody that is off the trail, you can go to their home, correct? And, you know, just to say that's something we would,
It's gonna be a lot harder to police if you open it up to anybody visiting somebody.
Yeah, so is a
I
separate
mean, you're basically
permit,
not
I
gonna
think,
police
too.
them, so, you know.
But I think it'd be pretty easy to police as far as making sure that they get to the closest cross streets.
Yeah,
Basically, you see somebody bombing past one cross street, well, hey,
yeah.
you had the opportunity to turn there, you did,
Right,
you're
right.
in the wrong.
I think most people are pretty respectful of it as of now, but that can change. But keep them away from like the highway intersections, 10 and 25, 85. They'll go the opposing way to that, so yes.
Whatever's the
Have a discussion.
quickest way to make it happen, obviously, we are in UTV season, so.
Right.
I mean, it would be nice for people to start doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say Chief Ridgway didn't see any, again, by the time he comes back from vacation next week, we could get this on before the next agenda and have, like we already even said, Public Safety Committee meeting to talk about some other issues. So we already have one scheduled for the 26th. So again, I think we could get this done basically in a couple of weeks. And then obviously when it's published, then it takes effect.
okay? Any other input on this? Again, I said we'll come back to public safety and then full council, and if everything works out, possibly just at the next meeting. Okay. Next up, discussion of possible action regarding financing and borrowing resolution for the 3rd Avenue East, Dryer Street, and Laneville Avenue.
As I explained to the Finance Committee, we did have some thoughts that Ehlers was going to be here tonight, basically via Zoom, to explain some of the options for that project. They got a little bit waylaid with the standpoint of they're looking at potential refunding that we might be able to have. Refunding, I mean, money that we borrowed through the state trust fund loan at a little higher rate. That basically we could get a better rate now, through the standard borrowing that we need to do here. So in lieu of being here tonight via Zoom, they're going to be here in person at our next council meeting. So basically the item is kind of put off until the next council meeting. But I shared a number of things with Sean Lentz from Ehlers, and I think many of you remember him from past years, and Sean's been with Ehlers for 20 plus years at this point. But I shared with him some of our the documentation that we went through and future projects that we have going on for the city, and I think so it'd be a good opportunity to ask any number of questions. We can get into some of the pool discussions, potentialities of that, and future projects, and kind of go from there. So.
And you mentioned about another area community had a recent offering that was really good interest.
Yes,
So
I think we were bringing up the city of Chautauqua actually had a taxable municipal bond. Most of ours are non-taxable, so they're look a little more favorable to most people. And they actually got a one, it's like 1.6%. The state trust fund loan is 3%, so again, that's less than half of the percentage. So the rates are still super good. I don't think that surprises anyone when they're as good as they are for mortgages. They're as good as they are for basically the public bond market. So again, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape from a borrowing standpoint, especially in not getting hit too hard with the interest rates.
And if we can, on any previous thing that we financed, if we can save some money there too,
Right.
and it just makes sense to see if, hopefully they'll have some good ideas and exactly some ideas of how we should approach it. Any more discussion concerning, or any questions concerning that? And we'll look forward to having Ehlers here at the next meeting. Next, we move on to police department. As we said, Chief Ridgway's on vacation, but he did include in the packet, of course, the call report. Did the chief have anything else for you?
He did. He just had one other thing he wanted me to share with you, and basically, our newest police officer, Natalie Weiss, is actually leaving to take a job elsewhere. So that's very unfortunate news. Again, clearly, as you've heard Stan say, we're struggling a little bit getting part-timers, and we thought we had a pretty good option there with Ms. Weiss, and that isn't going to work out for us. On the positive side, if there's a little bit of silver lining, she won't be potentially leaving until probably the middle of June. Obviously, Brandon will be coming back from off the school, obviously in early June, so Stan was pretty optimistic that we should still be doing pretty well for them. I think it's fair to say that he's looking at recasting the net for a new officer, and so we'll go through that again. And positive too, we did have another one of our part-timers who's looking for some more hours too for the summer. So again, I don't think we're in any danger for the summer of not covering shifts. So Stan did want me to share that with you. So again, not the best of news, but we wish Natalie well, or we'll wish Natalie well in the future, and we'll go from there. But summer-wise, we should be covered. That's all he asked me to share.
Any other questions for the police department? If not, anything from the fire department?
No, both fire and ambulance tonight, they had other conflicts and asked for an extension for their reports. So I said that try to make themselves available for the next meeting, both of them. So I think that should go.
The other thing with the fire department, we talked about, obviously, a future agenda item with public safety
Great.
concerning as far as the future financing within the department and how that's going to happen, but then also that we would have Jamie do his presentation of the information, the same information that the county board, the town board chairs got at the rural about the potential of purchasing a new fire truck. And so we'll be scheduling that on a future meeting with Jamie so that the council can get the full information, the same thing that the townships have received.
I think the anticipation was that he had that available at the meeting on the 26th.
Doing that,
That we have
yeah.
basically knowledge of that, so.
Okay, next about Public Works Utilities, Engineers Report, Russ?
Yes, just an update on your ongoing construction project. A1 did mobilize on Monday this week, going well. They're putting in water main on 3rd Ave East. They got a section from Prospect to Montgomery complete. They're starting to work towards Washington Street with water main, and they have maybe a couple 100 feet, 150 feet from that point. Putting in water main first, that's usually not typical, but the water main in that section from Prospect to just past the senior housing complex, the water main's deeper than the sanitary sewer, so they always want to put the deeper utility in first. So once they complete that section, probably by Friday or Monday, they should have the water main work done in that area, and then they'll switch over to the sanitary sewer, starting at Montgomery and working up the hill towards Washington Street, Hoth, Dryer Street, Laneville area. So it's going well. Matt and his crew they did some connections on Montgomery Street on both sides of the intersection, had the water shut down from 10 till 3 or so. Everything went well. Didn't hear of any complaints from anyone. Looks like we got a really good crew from A1 that's been around for a while, so they're planning on hitting it pretty hard, working some long hours. Sounds like they got a lot of work coming in and more work coming in, so sounds like the owners are pushing them to work some long hours and get this project done early so they can send them somewhere else, so, which is good. Good to hear. The project more than likely to get completed way ahead of schedule. That's all I have. Skidster guy We have our weekly progress meetings at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, so Mitch with SSG stopped by, just so we can coordinate when he can start his work once sanitary gets up to his portion of the project. So probably around the first or second week of June, he'll be starting his underground work. He's remobilizing either Friday or Monday to finish up some of the restoration work up on the city property where he did the loop at the end of Drive Street, connecting to the water main that connects to the reservoir and pump house. So he's gonna get back on site and get it cleaned up, finish graded, topsoil seeded, erosion mat, and do that little outfall pipe extension that comes from the reservoir, so.
Is the water on that lower section deeper than normal,
No,
or just deeper
well,
than the sanitary?
yeah, it's typical,
Shallower than normal.
yeah, it's sanitary shallower, so standard water main depth's 8 feet. In some areas, just so they can get the sanitary laterals over the top of the water main, you know, it's a little deeper than 8, maybe 9 or 10 at the most, in the critical locations where it's the same as the sanitary. So yeah, once they get past the senior housing project, then everything is standard 8-foot depth for water main for the entire rest of the project.
Any other questions for the city engineer? Thanks, Russ. Next, we'll move on, monthly report, Superintendent Gillis.
Yes, as the mayor said earlier, we did finish spring cleanup on Monday. We essentially did 2 different days of pickup. Monday, the guys spent about 3 hours out there picking up, and then on, looking at the calendar here, make sure I have the right days. On the 3rd, they spent about 4 or 5 hours out there picking up brush and leaves. So didn't hear any issues with people not following the rules. So it sounded like things went pretty well. So good service to have completed, and appreciate the residents following the rules for that program. The parks are all open. Last week we turned the water on to Tarrant Park, down to the campground. We got the Tarrant Park bathrooms opened up, had some plumbing issues in there, but got that rectified. Those are opened up, and got Memorial Park up, so the water's on, the bathrooms are unlocked, and everything's ready to go in the parks. Trash cans are out. Picnic tables, the ones that we do have left, are out. We just do still have some on loan to the school district for some outside learning and stuff. We'll be getting those back here the end of this month, beginning of next month. The guys are also out starting the hydrant flushing program, so you'll see them out turning and flushing all the hydrants over this week and into next week. That usually takes about a 7 to 10 day process to get that all taken care of. The RBC for the wastewater treatment plant, talked to the guys the other day. Schedule, it's still scheduled to be done June 18th. It looks like June 25th will be the date, the delivery date, the date that the contractor can be here to. So you got the contractor that has to be able to install it, the crane has to be here, and the trucking company. So we all have to coordinate one day where we can all make sure we're there at the right time. As soon as that truck pulls in, the crane's gotta lift it off, and then the other company's gotta be there to set it in the hole. So sounds like about June 25th, give or take a few days at this point. We will be getting that RVC installed. We have not experienced any treatment issues since it's been down. Everything's been real well. So as the temperature warms up here, you know, things are starting to change. Our treatment process changes a little bit in the summer, so but I'm not forecasting or seeing any issues with that. The pool, as you know, we did a test run and that portion is good. We fired the water up in the building to test the plumbing. We do have some plumbing issues in the building that we will get rectified. The mixing valve, which I did put in the budget because I knew that was kind of going bad at the end of our last season. that is basically malfunctioning. New mixing valve is about $1,500, and then we got about another $1,000 worth of plumbing that we gotta do in there, so about $2,500 worth of plumbing that we need to get done in the building, before we open things up, but, the mixing valve itself was put in the budget to be replaced if it failed, which it did, so. Other than that, the rest of the building is looking pretty good, for the summer, so. We're looking at, possibly opening for the first day of open swim around the 10th of June. I just had a meeting today with, Director Walton, myself and Scott. We talked, lifeguards are getting certified this weekend. So they should all be lifeguard certified here by next week. Looking like they can get to the pool around the 7th or 8th of June to do their cleaning and their stocking and their preparedness, and then we could probably be ready for open swim, starting on June 10th. Be open the 10th and the 11th, close Saturday and Sunday, the 12th and the 13th for Fun Fest. We're never open on Fun Fest weekend, and then we fire back up on the 14th for open swim. Swimming lessons, we're still working through our WSI issue. I have reached out to some of the neighboring communities. Mondovi's kind of in the same situation we are. They got one WSI certified instructor. They have 4 of them potentially going to pass a WSI class on the 9th of June. Be a little bit hard to work with them. They run their swimming lessons a little differently than we do. They run swimming lessons for 8 straight weeks in the morning. So that's our entire pool season, almost in a nutshell. So it'd be a little difficult to share WSI with them during the day. Possibly some night classes if their WSI lifeguards are willing to come to Durand. But I won't know that until they're even certified, which isn't until that first week in June, right around 7th, 8th, or 9th. So Ellsworth's kind of in the same boat. A lot of these communities run their lessons through summer school, so they use all the mornings of their summer school programs for swim lessons. So getting extra lifeguards to come in to run a morning lifeguard class here is going to be a little difficult, but we are working through that. We do have 3 potential WSIers that we could schedule in on some lessons. We talked, Director Walton and Scott and I talked about putting a poll out on our Facebook page, and try to see what age group or what level is of the most need in the community. Because we can't run levels 1 through 6 like we have in the past. I don't have 5 to 6 lifeguards to do that. So we're going to try and put a poll out on our Facebook page and try and gauge, not exactly sure how it's going to read yet, but we're going to try and gauge what levels we have the most interest in, so that we can try and just, if the poll comes back where level 2 seems to be the biggest group, we can schedule maybe some lessons for level 2 at night, or just do a level 2 and a level 3 if those are the ones that kind of have the most interest. So there's a lot of variables to dive through here. We're going to do our best over the next couple weeks. One thing too is if we do have lessons, the sign up is going to be very short notice. You know, you're not going to have a month of notification that we're going to sign up on this day. You know, you'll probably have a week or less of notification of what days we're going to sign up. We're talking about trying to ease that with an online type of a sign up, to make it a little easier so that you don't have to be here at City Hall at 4 o'clock, you know, because it will be a first come, first served type of a sign up. So the swimming, the open swim portion of the pool season, as of right now, I don't have no worries about it. It's just getting lessons in some way, shape, or form is we're still trying to work through a lot of that information.
And just real quick, so the 3 WSI people we have, they're solid individuals. They worked with us in the past, and they're willing to work with us, but they've got some other things going on. One can only commit to evenings. Another one's, again, working on a different, on a more professional job level that she's not quite sure what her schedule is gonna be. So that's what we're really waiting on before we can get too deep into the lesson planning. But we'll get there, and as Matt noted, like, the more we find out about what levels we really need and what the level of interest is in the community, is going to better help us even schedule with what limited resources we have.
With some of the people that are getting certified as lifeguards, some of them a little bit younger, so they'll stay a few years, and then, because maybe next year they get their jump to the next level.
Correct. All five of the people taking the lifeguarding class here in the next week are 15. 4 of them are 15. One of them is just going to be turning 16 here in a month or so. So they're all young freshmen, sophomores. So we'll have them for the next 3-4 years. As to where next year we can get them into a WSI class next spring, after they all turn 16, because you have to be 16. You can lifeguard at 15, but in order to be a WSI, you have to be 16. So that's our problem this year, is all of the staff that we have going to be lifeguards are not 16 and want to take WSI. So next year, we're kind of looking back to being what we would call a normal crew of WSI lifeguards.
So if the question comes up, it says, we'll offer as many lessons as we possibly can.
Correct.
I mean, basically, that's what we'll offer as many as we can with the people we have. Okay, anything else?
That's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Budgeted or not, the mixing valve goes against the 10,000 we're gonna put into the pool, yes or no?
No, it was because it was budgeted, so it doesn't go against the 10,000. Unless I would change that.
No, we still have the other budget for just yearly stuff that we have to do, and that's that group, but that would be it, yeah. Any other questions? Hearing none, next the council will continue the closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 1985-1E for the deliberating and negotiating, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session relative to the review and discussion of proprietary information regarding potential sale of city property.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Second.